Listen, those red lips are setting the tone, okay?
Bold, brave, and ready to bear all.
I'm all about free the nipple, right?
Susan Hyatt is on Intentional Living, breaking down what it truly means to be a feminist.
It's really funny because I've had people tell me, guests come on the show and say, no, you're actually a feminist. And I'm like, I don't like that word because to me, it's like,
oh you don't? I'm going to change your mind. Feminism is a movement about equality, period.
How to lessen the invisible workload.
Women are sick because we're doing too much.
And make the money moves that only women can.
We were raised to think, don't worry your little head about it. Your husband will handle that. Mm-hmm. All of those messages. It's like, oh, really? Watch me. Watch and learn. And you can do it too.
On an all-new Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Myers, a podcast dedicated to those seeking a more fulfilled and purposeful life through thought-provoking conversation, spiritual exploration, and authentic connections. The intentional movement has begun, and if you found yourself here, you are a part of it. Intentional Living with Courtney Myers starts now.
Hi, Susan. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. I'm excited to get into a bold, sassy, speak our mind conversation today because I know that's what you specialize in. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Courtney. I'm so delighted to be here. And listen, those red lips are setting the tone, okay?
I know. I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, okay, I put on a white shirt because I usually, my mom uniform is like white and black. I don't go so crazy. And I got to go with bold lip today because you are bold. And that I think is your signature, is just this boldness, which is amazing. How do you do that?
Well, I mean, I would say naturally, I was a kid who was the youngest, very outspoken, out of the box, and my parents really didn't know what to do about that. I was raised in Savannah, Georgia, with a lot of, shoulds about how a lady should behave, and that didn't fit me at all. I was always very mouthy, feisty. But over the years, I did tone it down. And I found myself as a young adult living a much more vanilla life. And I had to find my way back to that boldness. So now at almost 51, what you see is a woman who is very outspoken and doing things on her own terms. And it was very hard won. I went through a lot of trauma and a lot of evolutions, if you will. And so now I'm definitely living in my prime as boldly and loudly as possible.
I love that. So wait, how do we do that? Because I'm raising a daughter like that right now. She will speak her mind. She has an opinion. She's bold. She doesn't give any, whats about what people think or say. And my husband's kind of like that. So I've seen this trajectory of her to be like that. She's 4.5, as she'll tell you right now. She's 4.5 and can do everything on her own now.
Yes.
But then, I'm starting to see the shoulds creep into her life and the conditioning. And I even catch myself like, just don't be so loud. And then with all the training, all the knowledge, all the people I've talked to, I kind of like cringe when I say that. Like, I should not be dimming this voice of hers. This is everything I speak of. It's like, find your voice. And here I am telling my daughter, stop, we don't do that. And it's just kind of like, how do we support these young girls so that we can be bold? I know it's a lot as a parent. Sometimes you're just like, I need to think. But
yeah, it is a lot as a parent.
Yeah.
And I raised a daughter. She's 23 now. And a son, for that matter. He's 25, who both really, I think, are my life teachers. And you're teaching this, right, as part of your mission in the world. And here you have this little being who's going to make sure that you're walking that talk, right? And she's going to make sure that you understand what that actually means. And so I often joke about kids who are bold and naturally outspoken. It's like just parenting us kinds of people. It's like keeping it between the ditches, right? So it's like you want to guide them in a way that still helps them maintain that spirit. And so what I would say, mom to mom, is it's certainly not like there aren't times when it's like, okay, inside voice, or, okay, like I appreciate your passion about this issue. And, there are other people who disagree that maybe you could find a way to discuss it that isn't so, fill in the blank. Speaking from experience. So I would say it is a lot as a parent. And the fact that you're conscious about it and working on it is going to make such a difference in your daughter's life.
I think that actually makes parenting so much harder is when we become conscious of how we affect our children. Because like when I grew up, I don't think it was even a thing. I think, your parents could say something flippant and not mean anything. And it's like, now I'm in my 40s, still reliving that thing that happened when I was 6. I grew up performing, doing cheer, dancing, beauty pageants, all those things where it was like, be on stage, be on. But then it's like, no, this is how we act and this is what we do and this is what we say. And now it's kind of like, I'm finally pulling back these parts of me that are just like, I want to be out in the world. Yeah, the narrative in my head is going, no, we don't do that. Or I'll even hear people in my life say like, I can't believe she's saying that or doing that. And it's just kind of like this mixed message. And then it's just like being conscious of that and what it does to you individually, and then how you have to change that narrative for your children. It's like a losing battle, it feels like.
It is much harder when you're conscious and actively parenting. And I have a story so I published a book called Bear, which is about body positivity. And my daughter, when she was 13, maybe 14, she was in a band, an all female band, and she was the bass player, and she was going to practice, and she came down the stairs in what appeared to be from the front, jeans, boots, and a black t-shirt. And when she turned around to pick up her guitar, the entire back, she had cut the entire back of this t-shirt out, and no undergarments. And I had a moment. I went, and I said, oh, no, ma'am, you need to go upstairs and put on a whole shirt. And she turned around and said, are you body shaming me? Ooh. And I know. And I was like, see, these kids are smart. They're going to use your tools against you. And so I said, no, I'm not body shaming you. And I had to sit for a minute and I was like, okay, so you can see her back. What am I making that mean? And I'm all about free the nipple, right? And here she is deciding not to wear a bra. And I was like, you know what? Touche. Wear that to band practice. And I had to let her kind of grow into her own decisions about how she was going to adorn her body and not try to decide that the world might think certain things about her if that's how she was dressed. And that is hard, friend. That is hard. Now, I'm proud to say she is one of the most body confident 20-somethings. She has the best style. She is so cool. And we talk about that moment all the time because I had a choice in that moment to be afraid or to let her figure it out for herself.
I wonder how many of our decisions happen as parents from one, thinking either being afraid for our kids because we don't want them to have some experience that's traumatizing to them. I mean, I think at one point in junior high, I dressed up as Betty Boop for Halloween and I wore like this little red slip. And I had someone tell me that I look like a slut. or something.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah,
like
sure.
totally shamed for that. And I didn't even think anything of it, but at least that was my choice to do it. I went home and
Right.
changed into a princess costume to go trick or treating that night. Like it was like,
Mhm.
it still stuck with me. So you
Mhm.
know, like how often do we allow our children to go out into the world and have those experiences themselves where you can make that decision? I could have in that moment said, no, I'm not. I'm Betty Boop. This is what I'm doing. Or I could have gone home and changed. I chose to change. But, you know, versus how much of our decisions are because we don't want to be perceived a certain way as parents or allowing our
Right.
kids to do that. Because what
Right.
is that doing? How is that harming your daughter by allowing her to wear that t-shirt to band practice?
Exactly. It was all, you know, girls in the room, right? It was, you know, and the other thing that's interesting that was right around that same period. She gave herself her name, she changed her name
Mm.
from Emily to Cora because there were 5 other Emilys in her class and she did not
Mm-hmm.
like that. So she chose the name Cora, but originally it was her stage name. She picked a stage name and her stage name was Cora Vane. And Cora Vane had a persona, and part of that persona was that shade of red lipstick that you're wearing. She would wear bright red lipstick. She had my color, like platinum blonde hair. And one of the dads, after one of their performances, they would perform at like open mic nights
Mm-hmm.
and like a local pizza joint, would let them come and play. And I wasn't present for this. My husband was. And she was leaving. They were all saying goodbye. And one of the dads said, you know, you don't have to wear that red lipstick to be pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I don't wear it for you. I wear it for me. And it's not about being pretty. And slammed the car door. And my husband said he stood there with his mouth open like you have right now. He stood there like, oh my goodness. And he was like, I just got in the car. And I was like, right on, right? Because the censorship, right, of you deciding that Betty Boop slip was, oh no, they're going to call me a slut. And this dad saying, oh, you're pretty without that makeup. Well, guess what? It's not for the male gaze. It's because Cora
Mm.
Vane wears red lips on stage. And I mean, if you really want to think about the pressure that girls and women have and like the projection that we put onto
Yeah.
them, it's really interesting to think about all of those things. And just as you're saying, like, I'm sure there are many parents watching or listening who are like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. And I'm not saying that you should. I just want everyone to think about the pressure we put on girls to cover up because
Mm.
boys and men can't control their eyeballs and opinions,
Mm-hmm.
and worse, or the labels we put on young girls and women based on how they choose to dress.
Yeah. I love that. I love that your daughter was so bold and so consciously aware and being able to say that. I try and do it with Harper now, you know, because it's like she sees me put on the makeup and I let her because she loves it. She genuinely
Yeah.
loves it. But then she'll
Yeah.
look at me and go, Mommy, am I pretty? And I'm like, you're pretty regardless. It's like something it's this weird balance of like supporting them and allowing them to do that. But then my son will see it. He's 2. He comes up, he sees Sissy doing it. He wants his lips and he wants his
Right.
nails. And, you know, there's a lot of judgment about that, even with the boys. Oh, they can't have that or this. I'm like, you know what? Who cares? He's 2 years old. He wants to paint his nails. Go for it. Like,
Absolutely. And if he's 14 and wants to paint his nails, go for it. Right.
it.
I'm like, listen, all this, right. The pressure that we put on boys too, to be macho and to be a certain way. I think my kids are Gen Z. I
Mhm.
love Gen Z. I feel like they're going to save the world
Yeah.
because they're just breaking all of the rules.
Yeah, I think it's changing. And I love to see that. And I think that also happens with being more conscious as parents, allowing it to happen. And I welcome it because the way we've gone isn't working. No one seems to be, at least in my age and, you know, in our age group, happy. People are having these crises. And I feel like there's a huge awakening happening. There's a big shift in consciousness in general. And I think we need to just allow people to be. And I think sometimes we can take it a little too far.
Mhm.
But like, what does it matter? let everyone just be who they want to be.
Listen, I mean, because the alternative is like you're saying, people who find themselves, we're Gen X, right? And people who find themselves turning 45, 50, 55 and looking around and saying, "Okay, I checked all these boxes. I did everything they told me to do, and I'm not fulfilled." And who
Yeah.
cares about whatever, having the right neighborhood, school district, car, fill in the blank, right? I need to be happy.
Yeah.
And in my work for the past 17 years, it has been about helping people get out of those boxes and labels and create a life that they love. And so you and I are, simpatico in that way, and that what we want to help people do. But I think it starts with these rules about how kids can wear lipstick or nail polish or whatever. Let them be who they are.
Well, and I don't think we will find our true fulfillment or happiness or joy, contentment. I actually like it to be contentment because that really encompasses it all. You're going to be happy. You're going to be sad. I don't think we need to be on this plane of constant happy all time. We have to have all the emotions. Otherwise, we don't know what happy is. But like to find that true fulfillment and contentment, we're not going to find it if we don't explore in our life. And like you said a little while ago, is like, this is what we should do, or this is what we do. It's a phrase that like I find myself doing because it's like how I grew up. Like this, we don't do that. This is not who we are. And I'll say it to my
Right.
kids and I cringe every time I say it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, no, that might be who you are. It's not maybe who I am, but that's who you are. And that's okay. And I think allowing that will allow hopefully your children, my children, to live this life that is a little bit more balanced. I don't know if there's work-life balance, but a little bit more balance for whatever they find that balance to be, so that they
Yeah.
can be happy. Because I feel like when we get into our 40s or 50s, there's a lot of us that are searching for more. And I don't actually think it's a midlife crisis like it used to be called. I think it's more of a spiritual awakening that we used to call a midlife crisis, but it's more of like a come to Jesus moment. Like, what I've been told about life isn't all what it's cracked up to be. And maybe I need to go find something different.
Exactly. And I think, um, when I started this business, I was 33,
Mhm.
and I had a lot of clients who were empty nesters, going through midlife. And I remember thinking like, wow, I have a front row seat to what
Mhm.
happens in midlife. So I'm going to make sure I do this, 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 and this so
Yeah.
that I avoid that. And so some things I did, right? I learned, hey, don't wrap all of your identity up in your children and what they're doing,
Mhm.
because then when they leave, my clients were having breakdowns because they didn't know what to do with themselves. And so I was like, okay, I'm always going to have my passions and be my own person. I'm not just a mom. So I did do that. However, when I turned 50, I laughed. I was like, oh, I thought I was so smart. I thought I knew the loophole to that pause in midlife. I thought
Mhm.
I had the workaround. And what's interesting is there's really no workaround. You're meant to go through this transition in midlife so that you evolve and expand and figure out what's next for you. And so it's so funny. So I agree, like there's no midlife crisis. It's more of an awakening. It's more of a realization that like, wow, okay, I've lived this first half.
Mhm.
And so now what?
Mhm. So what does the now what look like for you?
Well, it looks like more books.
Mhm.
I love to write. So, writing books, more adventure. Um, I definitely, one of my passions is real estate investing. And my
Mhm.
husband has been in commercial real estate for 35 years. And so we created a project together called Women Invested, because a big part of my work is closing all of the gaps, the wage
Mhm.
gap, the confidence gap, the leader gap,
Mhm.
the orgasm gap, all the gaps. And when you look at the wage gap and you look at the effect it has on women, the domino effect that it has, particularly in women in retirement age, women not only don't earn as much as men, but don't learn how to invest. They don't have the same retirement. They're retiring in poverty at higher levels than men. And so when Scott and I started talking about teaching women how to invest in commercial real estate, it's because it's typically a boys' club, a white man's club, if you want to get specific. And only 1% of assets managed are female owned. And so I want to change that. And so I think another big part of this evolution for me is the work we're doing to educate women on how they can grow their wealth through real estate investing.
I'm curious how that goes because I've spoken a lot about women and wealth on the show, and I've had my friend Laura Tynan, she's the Witch of Wall Street. She's come on a couple times talking about this, and she used to work she is in the investing area and helping women get literacy around investing and how to invest our money and how to build wealth because it is a boys' club. And she's brought up to me before that it wasn't until I think it was like the 60s or 70s that women even were allowed to, one, have a credit card in their own name, have a bank account without a man's signature, and own property on themselves. Like, so it's not that far removed from us that it's still so ingrained in our psyche that it feels like a big jump and a big hurdle to accept that as women, because it's like, it's in us. How do we move beyond that?
Right. Well, so it was just the 50th anniversary. It was in 1974 that a woman could get a credit card without a male cosigner. And so in terms of how do we change it, it's no mystery, right? We were raised to think girls aren't as good at math. We know that now to not be true. Don't worry your little head about it. Your husband will handle that. All of those messages that we've received growing up. And so now what we know is women actually outperform men at investing. The research shows we're better at it. And there's lots of proven reasons why. We are less risky. We are okay with the long hold. We aren't as emotional. We are not as emotional when it comes to money. And so one of the first steps I help women do is create an investor's mindset, because you can't, like, if you're always worried, how I was, about like that spontaneous in the moment, like, let me go buy this thing to feel better. It's very difficult. I mean, I had to learn how to do it. You have this chunk of money and wait a minute, you want me to go put that over here and I can't touch it for probably a decade? What? Wait a minute. I want to like look at my money. And you can absolutely do both, but creating an investor's mindset to understand what this money can do for you and creating long-term wealth is very different than the mindset I had in college and in my early 20s, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's like literally when I bought my first house, I bought it by myself. Well, my parents did help me. My mom's a real estate agent. My dad's a contractor. It has a company, like, it was an investment, whatever. But I had to open up a separate bank account. Like, I had to go to this far in a different bank. I had to put everything I was writing, doing freelance work, all this other stuff. Every extra dime went into that account. I had to cut up the debit card and like shred it and not have access to it on my phone or anything, so that it was so separate from anything else I could use, so that I couldn't do that emotional spend where, I was at a store and I want that pair of shoes. Like, I had to like go home, transfer my, I had to go through all this stuff that took me away. So I had to physically make that like barrier to get to the point where I wanted to buy a house so bad. And it worked and it was wonderful. But like, still, we aren't taught this as women. And I don't think that's the right way to go. Like, I had to go to an extreme and I don't think I learned anything. But I think we do need to change our mindset, because even now I'll be like, oh, money's my husband's deal. Like, he can deal with it. He can come fix it. Like, or I'm not good at math. I've even had that told to me, like, oh, you're an amazing writer. You're so creative, but you're not good at business. You shouldn't be running your own business. I've had that told to me before. And I'm just kind of like, for me, it makes me want to say, screw you, I'm going to do it.
Exactly.
But like, why? Why can't I?
Of course you can.
Exactly.
Of course you can. I had, when I started this company, Scott and I both went and met with our accountant. And I was asking tons of questions
Hmm.
about, should I do an LLC? Should I do a corporation? Should I, just all the set up shop kinds of questions you would ask.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know if you need to worry about a lot of that until like maybe let's see if you make any money. He was so
Mm.
condescending. So now it's a miracle he's still my accountant. Now, when I go in, I'm like, let's pull up a chair. Pull up a chair, son. Let's look. Let's have a lookie. And he laughs. I mean, he's very proud of me, but that patriarchal messaging runs deep with those around us. Like, the absolute audacity to tell you
Mm.
you shouldn't run a business. They would never say that to your husband.
Mm-mm. And it was a woman in my life who told me that.
Oh, well, let me tell you, that programming and that internalized misogyny is there. It's like, oh, really? Watch me. Watch and learn. And you can
Hmm.
do it too.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like we can do it. And my husband and I've had this conversation that when us as women, when we band together and we do this, like there is going to be no stopping us. Like we need more women in power, but we don't need women in power playing by the men's rules. We don't need women in
Mhm.
power playing the man's game. I've even talked about this with like Hillary Clinton. It's like, I personally didn't want her in office because she was playing in the boys club. And I understand how she got there. She had to
Mhm.
do that to get to where she was. Like
Mhm.
that's who you had to become. You had to become this boys club man to excel as she did her rise. But I don't think that's the women we need in office. I think we need women, who rule like women, who have who have that divine feminine. I think we're missing that. What we're dealing with right now is old, like you said, this white old boys club that is just ego driven and running us all into the ground for their own gain.
Well, and when you talk about like when women are in charge and true leadership from women is different. Um, One of the other reasons why I'm so passionate about more women becoming commercial real estate investors is because when women own the building, when women own the block, they
Yeah.
care about the community. They become stewards of the
Mm.
community. And so even between Scott and I, when we're talking about an apartment complex and an improvement that needs to be made or something that needs to happen, I am always the one of the two of us that's like, this will make the conditions for living for them better. It might not
Mm.
be the best for the bottom line, but we'll have happier tenants, we'll have happier families, and it will help the whole community that lives there. And
Yes.
that is different than male commercial real estate investors. I'm not saying all of them. My husband is probably an exception. He is very caring and cares about what effect that's the shopping center or whatever it is going to have on the community. But usually it's just a spreadsheet. It's just
Hmm.
like, do these numbers work? And what's going to make me the most money? And no, I'm not going to do that kind of maintenance because, that's money out of my pocket. And so women do lead differently and women care more. It is shown over and over and over again that
Yeah.
when women are in power, everyone benefits because we're more community minded.
Well, and that's the thing is like this isn't a bash men show at all. And it's really funny because I've had people tell me, guests come on the show and say, "No, you're actually a feminist." And I'm like, I don't like that word because to me it's like
Oh,
all these
you
bad
don't?
puns.
I'm going to change your mind.
I know that's the thing is like it's been changed. Like it has started to get changed because they're like, no, what you're speaking of is feminism. Like it's in my mind, it's like this, like, oh, we're like down with men, and I'm actually very traditional in my process. So it's kind of like, no, it's just this. My story behind what feminism is, I think, is warped. And I'm
Yeah.
starting to realize, no, I am a feminist. I am here for women and helping them raise their voice. And it's not about bashing men. I think there's room for us all, the masculine and the feminine energies. But yes, opening up the space for us, I think it brings in so much more. It's not just about the bottom line. And as a as a country that's been all about the dollar, all about now the word's escaping me, capitalism, you know, we've gotten away from that community mindedness. And that's where I think we can welcome the female voice so much more.
Well, and it's funny that a lot of women who really reject the label of feminism do, I think, have a misunderstanding, because it's really just that you want parity. You just want equality in socioeconomic terms, politically, like you just want parity, not us over them or bashing men. Listen, I've been married 31 years. I love my husband. I raised an amazing son. And also, I am here for the women to get parity. I am here, and my son and my husband will tell you they're feminists. Feminism is a movement about equality, period.
I love that. I love that because, I think we have this, a lot of us have made up the story that it's just kind of like picketing women and burning our bra, you know, what, like how it kind of began. And that's not what it is. We need to support one another. And I love that because, I have a son and a husband, and my husband is extremely supportive of women. I mean, he's the first one to be like, we need more of you to lead, because we will bring in those changes that are needed. And I'm curious, like, how did you raise your son that way? Because it's funny how you raise a son and daughter feel very different. I mean, I'm very aware. I feel like I'm harder on my daughter because it's like more maybe personal. And my son, I'm just like, whatever you want. And I don't like how it's different. But I'm starting to see the trends of why boys are treated the way they are, and girls are treated a different way in my own little family. And they're 2 and 4.
Yeah, it is absolutely. My daughter, surprise, surprise, loved to point out how it was different. They were treated a little differently. And me being very conscious about it. Still, there were times when Ryan would say, hey, I'm going out. Cora would say, I'm going out. And I would say, with who? I was much more protective. And I really should have been. I raised Ferris Bueller, okay? I really should have been more clued into what he was doing. But they're raised with a different treatment, and that brings entitlement, which is what we're trying to educate them on. So, like, raising a feminist, a male feminist, is, I would point out to him all sorts of things like, you're not entitled to XYZ just because you entered the room, and I want to make sure that you are, as a partner, listening to ideas from your girlfriend and supporting those, and you don't get your way just because you're the man, and you don't, and so it was like a constant raising him to understand that there are characteristics of being a supportive partner that both men and women can embody. And there aren't certain roles, rules, or duties that are yours because you're a man, and hers because she's a woman. And so something else I raised everybody in this house, and I am still educating Scott Hyatt about, because man, it runs deep, is the invisible workload. Right?
Oh my God, so yes.
I am constantly like, that's another example of the invisible workload. That's another, like, asking me, when the dogs get vaccinated, okay, call the vet. Okay, I'm not your secretary, but like that kind of stuff where we're the keeper of all the details. We're the mood manager for the whole family. We're the organizer of all the things. And my kids are both now people who, in their offices, in their friendships, in their relationships, the result is they step up to the plate and don't expect that. Either Cora, she's the only woman in her office, and she does not step up to bake the cupcakes and plan all the little office parties because she's a woman and she tells them about it. And my son might do that. He might be the social director, right? And so it's like I see the result in that they're not taking on gendered roles in the office place, in the community, and in their relationships. And I think that's a good thing because guess what? Men can do housework.
Yeah.
You heard?
Yes. It's so interesting that you're saying that because my husband is extremely hands-on with the kids and the house. He does a lot. Yet sometimes we have these arguments that like, well, I just don't do anything. It's like he does way more than most men, I think, do. Yet there still is that invisible workload that I don't think is actually understood, which is like, I don't think he knows where the kid's pediatrician is because we switched pediatricians. He went to the first one, but like the second one, like he doesn't know where this doctor is. Like he doesn't know.
Perfect example. Right.
Exactly. Or little things like that. Or we need more laundry detergent. He usually knows that. But like little things like that that we're doing constantly. Or even like you said, the mood manager. Like my household revolves around the way I wake up. If I'm in a bad mood, my whole house is in a bad mood. And it's just kind of like, why? Why is it all? Or the kids are just so good for him. And they're just always like whining. And I'm having to deal with all that shit. And it's just kind of like, I don't understand how this got put on us, especially when you are in a partnership that is very, supportive where we do. I mean, he helps clean the house. The other day, I let him clean. I literally was like, I'm going to work and you can clean. And I felt guilty the whole time. I was like, oh, I should get up and help. But I'm like, no, I'm going to let him do it this time. He can clean the toilets.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would challenge yourself to really like make lists of all the things that you think are still on the invisible workload and just have conversations about it. Because the thing is that it has taken my husband, when my kids were little, the phrase invisible workload, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I would just always say, it just feels like you're laying on the couch with all this extra free time and I'm still up, making them go to bed, getting the laundry caught up, and it would turn into this fight. And he would talk about, like you're saying, your husband does a lot. He always has too, but still not what I was doing. And I would always say, I just wish I could hire an independent film crew to follow us around and like take notes. And then at the end of it, give us each a score. And because I was like, I just was so desperate to prove that I was exhausted for a reason.
Yes.
And so then, I became a coach, and then all the research started surfacing about invisible workload, and we had phrases and research to back this up. And so we've come a long way, baby. And yet he will sometimes, come to me and ask me a question. And I'm like, are you being serious in this moment? Like, do you hear that he asked me, we were having a Christmas party, and I was saying to him, listen, I can make you a list, but don't you understand that like even me managing the list, me being the keeper of the list and knowing what needs to be done, that's an example of it. But the morning came when he was to be my helper, so to speak. And he like bounds out of bed and he's like, I'm ready for my list. And I was salty about it. And one of the things on his list was to wash the fancy Christmas glasses. So he's like, well, where are they? Okay, well, they're in the china cabinet. And so then he gets them all down and then he wants to say that he thinks they look clean to him. And I'm like, no, they need to be washed. They've been up there a year, getting dusty. Like, let's wash them. He goes to the sink. And in all honesty, I swear to you, he comes to me and he says, do we have a sink stopper? Sir? I mean, now we have a cleaning crew that comes and like, I'm not in there washing dishes a lot either, but I know we have a sink stopper and I know where it lives. And he's like, I said, yes. And he said, well, he knew he was skating on thin ice. Well, could you tell me where it is? And I was like, if, but it just is never ending. So make your list and start unpacking your part-time backpack job. Okay. Give it away.
Oh my goodness. I love it because yeah, even now it's like he'll make dinner, he'll help get the kids ready, he changes like he does a ton. But still, who's sitting on the couch getting to unwind and binge watch a show at night, and who's figuring out how to work because I've been carrying, having to stop and go all day with my kids. Now, I know things are going to change. I'm in a very finite time of my life when my son starts preschool next year with my daughter. So then it's going to be like, oh, wow, I don't know what I'm going to have 3 hours in my day to myself. But I know that's about to change, but it still doesn't stop the fact that, like I'm going to have to go to pickups, or I still have to do the dentist or take the dog to the vet. I still do that stuff. And it takes away from being able to just get done a task that should take 5 to 10 minutes. It shouldn't be that long to send this list of emails. Yet I have to do it at 10 o'clock at night, and he can watch a show. It builds a resentment no matter how good your marriage is and no matter how helpful your husband is. That invisible workload is there. And I don't know why we've you grew up in the South. So, I'm sure you feel it even more.
Yes. And my solution, honestly, was to just start when I started making enough money that I could start hiring it out and hiring assistants and getting help. That's what I did. I was still managing all those people though, right? So I was still managing who came and cleaned the house and and did, babysitting and mom taxiing and all that stuff, right? All that added support was to outsource the invisible workload, right? And let me tell you, the laying on the couch or the golf or the whatever, research shows that on average, men have about 5 more hours of downtime a week than their female counterparts in heterosexual marriages. And so you're not crazy. That is what is happening. And I would just encourage you and anyone listening, if you have the resources, I want you to start to let go of you being the one that has to do it, hire it out, delegate it. If you have older kids, put those kids to work, and stop doing it all yourself because, you're up at 10 o'clock at night trying to send work emails and he's over there on a Netflix binge.
Yes.
And then it's no wonder women suffer from 90% of things like fibromyalgia, like the hidden illnesses. There is no mistake. That's why we're suffering from those.
Is it just the stress and anxiety response of having to keep everything together?
Yes. And also Time Magazine had a great article about it. It's the self-silencing. So sucking it up and just doing it. That inward stress and anger is causing all of those invisible medical issues that you're not crazy. You really are exhausted and your doctor can't figure it out. And is it my hormones? And do I have Lyme disease? And do I have, you know what? You're getting all of that. Women are sick because we're doing too much.
Wow. That is huge. And it goes back right into why you started your business, why you do your coaching, why this podcast exists, is women finding our voices, speaking up and not silencing ourselves. It's your daughter speaking up and saying, I want to wear the red lipstick because that's what Cora does. Like, that is exactly what we need to do, is not silence ourselves, because when we silence our voice, we're silencing our spirit. We're silencing our inner wellness. We're silencing everything about us. It's why I deal with anxiety and ruminating thoughts, because I've silenced it. Because whether it's you don't want to be too loud, you don't want to cause a problem, whether you're whatever your thing is, we've been silenced for too long. And that's where the feminist line needs to come up.
Yes. Beautiful summary. So well said.
Oh my goodness. So how do we say yes to using our voice more? I know you have an event coming up, Summer of Yes, I think you called it.
Summer of Yes. I have a community called Big Yes Energy. And every summer, this is our seventh summer running the Summer of Yes. And it's really about, hey, you run those kids around, you get them in summer camps, you're planning all these family vacations, you're doing all this stuff for everybody else. What about your summer? And so it's all about claiming your summer for yourself, some of it, and doing things that delight you. So it's about body, it's about wellness, it's about joy, it's about pleasure. And so it's like a women's summer camp. All summer long, we have classes. I actually have a meetup weekend at Kentucky Lake. And it's a fun program. It's my most popular program that I run. And so it starts June 8th. If people want details, they can just go to susanhyatt.co.
That's amazing. And we can follow you on there. And what are all your socials? How do we follow your journey?
Instagram at Susan Hyatt, also on Facebook. And then I have a podcast called You've Got Nerve, which is stories of women getting up the nerve to do big things.
Oh my goodness. And that's a challenge in itself. I mean, it can take a long time to get up the nerve to finally do what you want to do. So I love it. I love stories, because that's how we connect, and that's how we find the courage, and that's how we find the support, is through the real life stories of people doing it. So I love that you're doing that.
Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure.
Oh my goodness. It's been so much fun. I love meeting you, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
And that's it for today's Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Susan Hyatt, for the great conversation all about feminism, finding our voice, and saying yes more. Her Summer of Yes is coming up. And if you want to join, I'll put all the information in the show notes below. And as always, you can find Intentional Living with Courtney Myers and Intentional Media on our website at CourtneyMyers.com. That's where you'll find our books, our courses, and everything else we have coming up soon. I'll talk to you later.